Are you a good girl or a good boy? Does that phrase even send shivers down your spine like it does me? Um, Good girl and good boy. Like, I don't know. I heard that a lot when I was growing up. It was part of our culture. Be a good girl. And what that meant to be a good girl is to be quiet, is to smile, is to make other people comfortable, frankly, to do what's asked of you, to be seen and not heard. I never played that role really well, but I have to tell you, I really tried. Being a good girl to me meant just doing exactly what you're told and doing what you're supposed to do. And the thing that is so surprising is that people are still living that way. That instruction that we learned in those very early formative years, they're still dictating our days now. That we're still striving to be a good girl. And the idea is that if we're a good girl or good boy, we're going to be liked and we're going to be valued. We're going to be appreciated. We're going to be kept in the tribe, so to speak. And our worst fear is being kicked out, is being abnormal or deviant or something that would not make us fit in. And being a good girl or good boy, make sure you fit in, that you're going to make the people in charge, you're going to listen to them, and you're going to hold them and protect their seat of power while you just do what's being asked of you. So it's talked about a lot from a parenting standpoint, at least it used to. I think things are starting to change, but we're still doing it as adults. So what does that look like to be a good girl or good boy as an adult? Well, it means to smile, even if you feel like frowning or sneering. It means to stifle your authenticity. It means to choose politeness over being real. A good girl and a good boy would mean, well, they're really different things. I don't know how deep I can get into the gender differences. I certainly know the good girl role well. But for our purposes for today, let's talk a little bit about it. So a good girl right now would work very hard to be a people pleaser. She would be diligently trying to make sure that she gets a lot of likes on social media, that she is doing everything that's asked of her, so that if she's asked to be on the board, the answer is immediately yes. Why? Because it's such an honor and you're needed. And when you're needed, you show up. That's what you do. It doesn't matter whether you want to or not. A good girl doesn't go inward. A good girl is focused, and good boy, they're focused on the external world. There's really no deference to preferences, our own preferences or wishes or wants or needs. A good girl would show up for everyone else and really be fully absent for herself. And here's what I know about people pleasing, right? I think of it as this just like puppy dog eagerness, like, tell me what to do, tell me what to do. See, a good girl gives her power away. A good boy and good girl, they're forfeiting it all the time in deference to somebody else's plan. It is an abandonment. It is like succumbing to somebody else's plan or vision or agenda. It's a lack of power. It's an abdication of our own power, our personal power, our just beingness, our uniqueness. It is a call and pull to be like everybody else. Or maybe even to be an exceptionally good girl or boy. And that would mean you'd be even that much more vigilant, even that much more attentive, that much more eager. I can tell you, I see so many good girls and boys. They come to my practice, they are depleted. Oh, they're impressive. And the world will give them lots of validation for this lifestyle choice. I mean, that's what it is. It's a lifestyle choice to be a good girl or a good boy. It's a habit, and then it becomes a choice, really, because it has just been how you roll. It's who you are, and it's how you evaluate your own success. Your personal success is dependent on whether you're liked and whether you've done what everybody asked you to do. But you know what? We can't get away with it for long. It starts showing up in so many ways. Resentment. Resentment is overgiving, giving away too much and saving too little for yourself. So whenever resentment shows up, I want you to understand it is a sign. It is a sign from your soul saying, hey, this isn't working. So it also shows up in sometimes physical symptoms, definitely emotional symptoms, anxiety, depression. This just sheer adrenal fatigue might be just sheer exhaustion, because a good girl and good boy is looking constantly for signs in the universe. Am I okay? Right? Looking for signs, not in the universe in the big way, but in this day-to-day contact. Am I getting validation? Because standing at the ready, trying to read and interpret all these messages for what's being asked of you, well, it's depleting. So the good girls and the good boys, they show up on my doorstep and they're tired and they're resentful and they're sick of this and their body is starting to act out. Their body is forcing them to opt out of this destructive cycle of people pleasing. And the rage is coming out. So the rage will come out in lots of ways. Like there might be like road rage. I see that a lot. Just like, gosh, I can't, like, they can't pull it off anymore. They can't slap that smile on anymore because they are done. The call for authenticity starts getting louder and louder as we get older. And for many of us, for those that have woken up, our body is going to pull us back and remind us that we deserve better, that we are here to be uniquely ourselves, to serve as only we can. And that requires self-attunement, self-awareness. And if our glance is always outward, we are not learning about ourselves. We are not addressing our needs. We're not tending to the very foundational habits that we need in order to serve, in order to do good, right? Instead of striving to be a good girl or a good boy, which is frankly antiquated, misogynistic, and really patriarchal and really dysfunctional, and keeping us small and childlike. Instead, it's like we want to do good, and we get to define what that is. Doing good, however, requires authenticity. It requires self-awareness, because otherwise it's just going to be another variation of being a good girl or good boy. So in order for us to be at our best, in order for us to do good, to do the work that only we can do, to contribute in only the way that we uniquely can, we have to drop this role of good girl and good boy, and we have to be good to ourselves. See, good girls and good boys, they're not good to themselves. They abandon themselves over and over again in service to a communal goal, right? But the fact is that when we deprive ourselves of our needs, when we deprive ourselves of our own well-being, then we're depriving the entire community, the world, of our best gifts, the ones that we are uniquely here to share. So good girls and good boys, they fall into martyrdom. And then they get mired in the resentment that we've been talking about all along. So martyrdom, so last century, doesn't work. We get strangled by the superhero cape we keep tying around our neck and wondering why we're choking, right? So let's untie that cape and let's take a deep breath and say, you know what? What would it be like if I were good to myself? See, good girls and good boys, well, they struggle to show up for themselves the way they show up for everybody else because of guilt. They feel, and I'm talking as if I can't relate to this. Trust me, it's been me for a lot of my life. But maybe we feel, I should say, guilty, like it's indulgent, it's selfish, it's self-engrossed. It's repulsive when we start looking at like, oh my gosh, what about all the need in the world? It's like, yeah, but in order to serve that need, we've got to do at least the basics, the foundational stuff. We've got to eat well. We've got to sleep. We've got to rest. We've got to play. We've got to breathe deep. We've got to have some reflective time, right? We've got to do these things, move our bodies, these things so that we can continue to serve and so that we can be the authentic expression of who we are. We're here for a reason. And I truly believe, and let me save you hours and hours and hours on the therapist couch, our life's purpose, here's the secret: to be the highest version of ourselves. That's it. And trust me, this has taken endless hours of therapy, endless hours of research and studying and soul searching and retreats and all of this stuff. And then it's like, oh my gosh, that's what it is to be the highest version of ourselves. So be 1% better than we were the day before, right? To show up and be present enough to be able to refine and observe ourselves with compassion and curiosity. See, good girls and good boys aren't looking inward at all. They're too busy frenetically looking for signs that they're okay, signs that they've done enough, that they got it just right, that they were the good girls and good boys that everybody expected. They are trapped by expectations. So let's shake that up. If this is you, if this resonates at all, I want to challenge you to define what being good to yourself might look like. Well, it might mean saying no a lot more often, right? It might mean saying no to all these external commitments and pressures and expectations, and instead say yes to yourself. Yes, I'm going to sleep in a little bit. Yes, I'm going to go for a walk and then have a meeting. While if I need to have a meeting, I might suggest, hey, I'm going to go for a walk and I'll put the AirPods on. Let's do that, right? We get to be creative and resourceful. What would being good to ourselves mean? It would mean that we'd risk inconveniencing other people. It might mean that we said yes to something and we actually change our mind, because right in that moment, it's not the good choice for us. It's going to mean definitely disappointing other people. It's going to mean maybe getting up earlier in some cases so that we can have time to ourselves to reflect. It's going to require time with a journal, a planner, to be curious about our own needs, and then to do the work of actually honoring it. Being good to ourselves means that we feed ourselves skillfully, that we understand we're asking a lot of our bodies and our minds, and that requires exceptional nutrition. We're going to tame our thoughts. We're going to make sure the thoughts we have about ourselves actually buoy and support us, that they are scaffolding for a life well lived instead of something that's bullying and taming, and tearing us down. We actually want our thoughts that we can choose, for which we are 100% responsible, thoughts that actually make us feel great about ourselves. Why? I mean, duh, when we feel great about ourselves, we actually do great. So instead of being focused on being good girls and boys, let's be focused on being great versions of ourselves. And then we're actually going to do great. That good is going to be mediocre because we're striving for great. But it requires letting go of that role, of that encasement, of looking outward for being okay, that validation, and instead start being curious about, hey, do I like myself? What is it when I actually feel good about myself? And am I, when I'm feeling good about myself and doing what it takes for me to be at my best, am I really being good to myself and the rest of the world? Absolutely. You can't separate the two. Deny yourself, ignore yourself, destroy yourself. And then what? How much are you going to have to give? All you're going to have is disease, dis-ease, resentment, and rage. So let's choose authenticity. Let's choose the path of self-expression, of contributing mindfully and intentionally to the world. It takes courage to be disliked, but we really need to instead be curious about whether we like ourselves. And from that place of self-love and self-compassion, we can give so much more. We can be so much better than good.